Welcome, Coach Joe. How's it going?
Thank you, Ben. Thanks for having me.
All right. So I'm very excited to dig in. Joe, can you tell us a little bit about what it is that you are up to in the world, and then we can go into your backstory?
Sure. So I'm a coach, and I have been a coach for more than 25 years. And back when I started, there really was no such thing. We kind of invented it and used ourselves as guinea pigs, me and a small gang in New York. And this was, like I said, almost 3 decades ago. And our industry has grown a lot since then, and we've kind of niched down in many ways. And I would say my niche are really people who want to jumpstart the career they're in, or expand it out. But basically, people who need to develop their own leadership, whether it be in their own relationship to their own talents and career, or as a actual boss person inside of a company or their own company.
Awesome. Amazing. Amazing. And so you mentioned that you've been doing this for a long time. How did you get into it, and what were you up to prior? Tell us about the superhero origin story.
My superhero. Yeah. So it's interesting because I was excited and honored to be invited to this series, because it very much illustrates my journey. I really got educated in the European musical tradition from the age of 9, and went all the way through university. I graduated from New School University at age 21. So we're talking my entire childhood and teens in music education. So, I worked as a singer and a musician and a performer. And, my side hustle was coaching. My, let's call it, stage mates, or like castmates, they all waited tables, and I started coaching. And as I went on, I realized that I was a professional musician, so I could obviously make a living, but I had to come face to face with the fact that I was actually a better coach than I was a musician. And that had a lot to do with my own passion as well. I started noticing that my side hustle, I was way more passionate about that than I
Right.
actually was about performing. And there's like a deep knowing that you come to when you are in your right work. So sometimes I think it's good to maybe start side hustles to see where you really belong, because
Right.
if you belong there, it will naturally grow into your main gig.
Awesome. Awesome. And how did you actually step into coaching as a side hustle? Did somebody knock on your door, or were you looking for the right thing?
Well, I think, as with anything, it starts with your own personal interests. So a lot of teams, they read Kafka, and they read all the, philosophers, and they ponder, the mysteries of the universe. But then they get serious, and then off they go. But I never stopped that journey. So I
Right.
think it started with really studying, and I studied, and then when you've studied enough, it becomes very natural to start to teach it. So then I started at about 21 teaching, and and it went on from there. So I basically taught in an educational institution, basically the science of being, or the science of living. And then I started my own company.
All right. Awesome. Awesome. So let's talk about what how people can tune into their passion to get into the side hustle. And I also want to talk about limiting beliefs and how to overcome those to allow people to let their side hustle flourish. So let's talk about intuition and passion, and then we can go into how to overcome the limiting stuff.
Sure. Well, I think I would say that a good hack to finding out what your passion is to look at the things that you've always loved. You really could dip back into your childhood and see, what was it back then that always got you going, and you could spend hours on it. And it might sound funny, like, well, you couldn't have done that with coaching, but it could be something related, as in, you know in my case, it was a bit of a Freudian thing of my mother divorcing and reversing roles a little bit. So I was 4 and she would ask me for advice, right? Like, and I realized, like, being Pavlov's dog, that's how you get love. Like, you give really good advice. But so that's kind of tragic in some ways, but in some ways, I don't think it only was that conditioning. I also think that it was true. I think it was that I maybe was born with a certain amount of introspection or an old soul, who knows. But I just know that, like, thinking about deeper things, thinking about why we're here, was always important. That's something that came very naturally to me. And I also remember being fascinated by older people. I could sit hours with an old elderly person at a party instead of my peers, just to like finding out how life works and how they solve different life problems. So, long answer to short question, I think that you can follow the yellow brick road from when you're very young
Right.
to where your strengths and passions got formed.
Yeah, and I echo that sentiment. One thing that I've started doing in the past couple of years is starting to draw again, and that was a place where I was in flow as a child and could express myself. And it's amazing how it's led to a dad blog, and now I'm actually writing my first children's book. So it's
Oh,
yeah, little Benny Piggy. So
how
it's
cute.
it's exciting where those things can lead that you can reach out to when you're reach from when you're very young. So
Right.
one thing that's been important in my journey is tapping into intuition as part of those things that really you can use as a signpost. And one of the things that I know I ignored for a while is intuition. So when you work with clients, how do you help them tap into their intuition and really turn up the volume on it?
For them, you mean like guiding them, helping them to hear themselves?
Yes.
Is that what you mean? Well, sometimes it can be very deep, right? It can be very deep in years and years of training or education down a certain path that maybe wasn't conducive to listening to yourself. But it all depends. But I really do think you have to take an inside outside approach. Do writing exercises, you could journal, you can ask yourself questions, like for example, the answer to something, if you do the exercise of asking yourself 6 questions, that
Right.
knowing that the first answer you give something is never the real answer, like the real answer is 6 levels deep. That's a good exercise to really begin to introspect and see, but what, kind of like how kids ask, right? But why, but why, but why? And then after the 6 but why, you're probably going to start to hear something that sounds authentic. So that's one approach, along with journaling or even free flow. You've heard about the morning pages, right?
Right.
Morning pages, but just free flowing and just that came from the artist way, Julia Cameron, but just free flow writing to see what comes out. So those are a couple of things that someone can do to begin to really hear what one's own inner voice is saying. But sometimes that doesn't work either. Sometimes it's so busy in there with all the voices that were never your own, parents and teachers and authoritarian figures or whomever, that sometimes you might just have to do outside in. And that can be anything from exercising. Sometimes, I've told myself I'm going to go for a long run and I will not stop until I have the answer to this question. And trust me, there will be many long, long runs, but sometimes it was a short one. Sometimes it came fast. So that's one way. Another way is to interview people around you. You can really pick like 3 to 5 people around you that you truly trust and you trust their judgment and they know you well. And you can ask them, what do you say? Like, if I were to put my talents in one basket and go for it, what should I do? And you would be amazed at, most likely those answers are very similar.
All right. I love it. Those are some great suggestions there. So I know in my journey, I had an inkling of what I wanted to do. And one of the things I was thinking in my head is like, what if that's not the right thing? So I was kind of
Uh-huh.
in this place of like, what if I choose incorrectly?
Right.
How do we deal with that scenario?
Well, it's a very, very good question, right? Because the issue with that is that there is no right thing, is there? There isn't. So we have to invent it. You have to invent all your good reasons, don't
Right.
you? And it's a little bit like when people second guess the relationship they're in. Like, ooh, what if there's someone better out there, right? And the people who do that, they're the ones who end up single because there was always someone better. There was always someone better. And that's when you have to buy into the notion of love the one you're with. Like, love the one you're with because you're with them for a reason. And unless it's so unworkable that it doesn't work, then that should be your sign. But the truth is that if you find yourself coming back to the same line of work over and over again, and not because you're forced into it, but because you're drawn to it, that's something to listen to. I moved a few times in the past few years, both internationally and interstate, and my job finds me. A couple of times I thought, well, maybe I should just try something else. And lo and behold, sooner or later, what do you know? I end up with a gaggle of coaching clients. And I'm thinking, I'm here again. And at some point, I just have had to surrender to it. So sometimes it's less about choosing than it is to surrender to what's right in front of you.
Right. All right. I love it. Yeah. Surrender can be hard for an analyzer like myself. Um, but
Yeah.
um, but it's so true. So true. So another thing that I struggled with was what if I'm not successful doing this? What if I'm not able to put food on the table with this job? Is this right? And especially like with a nice corporate cushy job where it was high six figures, and then you go
Right.
into this unknown. How do you coach people through that type of thinking?
Well, this is where I think that, uh, let's say that in the case that you are a service provider, such as us, like you're not delivering a product, then everything hinges upon how you carry yourself and your own BPs, like your best practices for
Right.
how you conduct yourself in your business. And the truth is that I am pretty stringent with my schedule. I go to work like the same as everybody else does, and people say, "Oh, you own your own time, and you can go to a museum in the middle of the day." And I'm like, "Yeah, but I don't." like,
Right.
like no, no, no. At my desk is like everybody else, and I work 9 to 5, and sometimes I work evenings because I have to with time zones and such. So I really think it's important to have your conduct set out for yourself,
Right.
and that you really do have to hold yourself to a certain standard, and then you have to trust that standard, work that work ethic and those rules you set for yourself, that they will actually carry and bring fruit. And then also knowing that if you then have, let's say, pursued a tactic for getting clients to work and it's not working, being willing to switch and seek some mentorship and go, well, clearly I've been barking up the street for a while now and I'm not getting any results. Either I have to change my approach or maybe change my target market. But the point is that I think like having a really high standard of your work ethic is incredibly important.
All right. And that's awesome. And I totally hear you about sitting at your desk and showing up, and also underlining what you said about having faith that the work that you do pays off.
Mhm.
What um, have you ever had the value conversation in your head about um, you know asking for certain amounts of money and working to level that up? So I think like we all need to kind of have that conversation as service providers. It's like, okay, I need to go to that next level of asking
Mhm.
for X amount of money. And how do
Right.
you grapple with that conversation?
Well, I think everybody has a zero that they're scared of, right? So I like to play that game with myself, or like add on a, like you think of a number, right? And
Okay.
then you add on a zero, and then you add on a zero. And at what zero do you start to get a little bit uneasy, right? Like Is it at $100 an hour? Is it at 1,000? Is it 10,000 per project? Is it 100,000? Like, where's your limit? And now and then I take myself through that mind exercise just to massage my own brain, and so that I don't fall into some kind of rut of like, this is how I do it and this is what I charge. It's like, no, it really is that prices go up over time everywhere. So if you keep charging the same, you're going to be, bankrupt in a while. But then there's also some sobriety to bring to it. I think, yes, you should definitely keep investigating where maybe there's a self-worth issue. But at the same time, I think it's tempting to maybe think that the goal is to charge as much as you can, right? As if that's some kind of proof of your self-worth. But what you have to also remember is the more you charge, the more is expected. It's really true. Like you charge, white glove prices, you better bring white glove service, right? So there really is certain levels of that. And sometimes I'm able to help clients with that, to position themselves in a place where they didn't take on too much for where they are, because there are certain rites of passage along the way. And maybe you're just a unicorn and you can just go out there and off the bat charge, tons and tons of money, and good on you. But there is also how much you're willing to carry. I mean, you're a relatively new father. That might not be the time to double your prices every quarter, because you like that. Like, it might be good to have a bit of a steady state until you're ready. So that might have sounded like a very convoluted answer, but the short answer is there is a number that the market can carry. And if you want to charge a lot more than that, then now you're talking about exclusive service that demands a certain amount of attention.
All right, that makes sense. Do you have any stories from any of your clients about amazing switches from corporate stuckness to them coming alive with their side hustles? Like, does anything come to mind?
Oh, I have so many. I don't even know where to start. Yes, I do. I think that, okay, let's see if I can give you a really good one. So I had a client who was a singer in New York, and she happened to have gone to, she was best friends with Nora Jones. They went to the same school, had the same education, and frankly, the same level of talent. This girl was wicked talented. She was so good. And then it was one of those things, like, one of them made it and the other one didn't. All right. And it was just sad, right? It was just really sad, because she was bitter and she didn't want to like call up Nora Jones. She didn't want to, you know what I mean? Like, she was just like, life was unfair, and she felt betrayed. And, she had a list of like what had been done to her, right? And she'd quit, and she was so talented. She was such a good singer. She'd quit. And all of that was to say that when I started coaching her, I really had to, bring her back to reality. Like, she had created a world, right? She had created a world. And I was like, all right, lady, first of all, none of this is Nora Jones's fault. Like, this is not, she's your friend. She's done nothing to you.
Right.
And then you don't get to waste your talent. That's not allowed. Just because she happened to then win 5 Grammys, like, oh, so that's now like the ticket you get to just quit and like throw it all away.
Right.
So I got her back in, right? Got her back in the game. And, she started working professionally again. And it was so beautiful, because apparently Nora Jones and she didn't know this, she found out later, Nora Jones kept going to her gigs and sat in the back and never said she was there. I mean, it's just so precious, right? So that whole world that she had made up wasn't even true. It wasn't even real. It wasn't even real. So she was back. My client was back in the work that she loved, making a living, and frankly, really got back to why she was doing it. It wasn't just so she can make it. I mean, some people make it, some don't. And more often than not, it's just luck. It's just freaking luck, right? In this case, it really had nothing to do with the talent or anything. It just so it went. So that's just one example of how, if we don't manage our minds, they can really direct our lives in a very undesirable way.
Right. I think it's a nice segue into leadership. So you talked at the top about how you help develop leaders. What are some of the key areas that you work with? You mentioned mindset. How does one develop good leadership?
Where do I start? How long do you have?
You know.
Like what part would you say of leadership? Like what particular segment? Because there's a lot about leadership, but maybe
So let's
what?
talk about, in this instance, the need for self leadership to really
Yes,
step out of your stories and into your vision, right?
yes, good, 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 good sliver of leadership. So I would say, you know, it's a little bit simplistic to just say, just do it, just go for it. Like, I don't know that I would advise somebody to just quit their day job right away, because you really do need to pay your rent and feed your family. Like, there's a reality to the money you have to bring in. There really is. But at the same time, there is that cultivating the faith and belief in yourself that you have something to offer. But I think all those fears tend to blend in the background when you take the attention off yourself. I mean, you've heard this before. Like, when you think about serving the other person, you stop being nervous about how you're doing,
Right.
and that's nothing new. But I like to think of as a service provider, the mystery someone is. Like, they're just like, people are such an amazing ball of wax, and I get to sort out some of the muddy parts. And it really is like, if you like to build puzzles, let's say, right, or a good game of chess, like, to really figure out what that move is, to checkmate the habits and the ways of doing things that you have that no longer serve you and no longer work. And I can't think of anything more satisfying. So if I think of it more like my game to play, like my really, really fun mission to figure this one out, like a really good mystery, like a detective, like where's the trigger point, and then see it all unfold before you. I mean, it's a total thrill. And I think of it that way, then I don't worry about how I'm doing, or I don't worry about how I will do, because I'm so clear that what I'm providing and the service I'm giving is worth it for somebody, because I know, because I would want it. That's always a good measure. Like, would I pay for that? Would I value that? And if I can say yes to that, then bingo.
Yeah, no, I think you hit the nail on the head in terms of focusing outward, because when we like spend time in our own heads rather than serving, uh, we really don't serve anybody. And
Right.
in my story, I was in that quandary in my head about what's my purpose. I started a podcast, and that really helped me interview people, help inspire other people. And then I was like, okay, this coaching thing really is taking root with me.
Mm.
And all those kind of like tea leaves kept unfolding. So
Yeah.
um, I love that message about service. What else have we not covered that you think is important in helping people in the side hustle to freedom? Have we covered it all, or has there been a stone that we have not unturned yet?
Well, you asked me to provide a free gift to our
Yes.
viewers, and I'll say what it is, because I think that it's a part that we haven't covered. We have talked about kind of like the overall scope and like the confidence and how to think about it, but we're still a little bit in ethereal land.
Yes.
And I really like to land things in reality. Like, okay, like, how does this work? Day one, here you are. So you're gonna start working. What do you do first? And so I really, really, really think that having good systems really help. Other than setting your work hours and showing up dressed as if going to work. There's no like schlepping around in your pajamas here. But no, like, you're a professional. So I like really good systems. So my free gift to the viewers is what I'm calling a systems review, like the
Okay.
Coach Joe systems review. And it's just a whole list of systems that I've compiled, everything from very, very simple that you've already heard of, let's call it like what email system to use, right? Are you using MailChimp or Aweber to basically when you have emails of people to email, you have to have a list for them, right? So what system to use, and that's different from for different people and what uses they need them for. But then it's like, you know, what web provider, and even down to your financial systems, and like what how should I be able to take payments, and how should I have a long list of that, because I find that sometimes if you get stuck there, you could feel so overwhelmed you might not move on.
Right.
And if you just have the systems like, okay, this is where I'm going to keep my email list, this is how I charge people, sometimes that provides a little bit of comfort, like a little bit of anchoring inside of everything else that feels so up in the air, so that at least you have the professional framework for your business. And then, not to mention, when you launch, you really do want to seem and look professional, not just for outside purposes and how you look, but also for your own self. Like, it's important that you, from the get-go, take yourself seriously, much like you want to be taken seriously by your future clients.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. So that's all in your free gift. That's an amazing resource. What I mean, that leads me to a follow-up question. What do you think the one of the most important systems people can have is, or what was like a game changer for you that were like, aha, I can't wait to share this with others?
Well, you know, honestly, again, I'm super pragmatic here. I use Stripe
Uh-huh.
for charging people. And it's a secure system for credit cards, because right now you're not allowed to store credit cards personally,
Right.
like on your computer or anything. And I don't necessarily know that everybody knows that. And then they might get stuck. They might not know about what do I do then. It can get really free and complicated. And unless I work with a larger company that has a whole, you know, HR and invoicing system, then I do take credit cards, because I hate chasing money. I really do. Like, it's like I don't want to. Like,
Right.
I don't want to chase money. So I take credit cards. And that's another, like, it's a bit of a pitfall if you go down the route of like, I'll just send you an invoice. You might be spending your time chasing money, and that might sound very stark, but it's true. So you want to try to automate as much as you can. And I think the game changer in some ways was when I used something like Stripe. Then I felt like I still could have my systems that work for me, but I still kept my client information safe and secure, which is super, super important.
Yes. Yes. I'm a Stripe user as well, so I second that.
Right.
And actually have a software called Dubsado, which is like on top of that for invoicing and projects and templates, which is pretty cool as well. Awesome, Joe. Well, really appreciate your time, your wisdom, and your practical tips. Thank you so much for being a guest, and look forward to connecting with you again soon.
Thank you so much, Ben.
All right.